So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to break down Rome's entire clandestine machine. We'll start with their intelligence networks, then move to the special forces, see how that power corrupted them, look at a catastrophic failure, and finally, we'll see how it all connects to our world right now.
Every empire runs on information. It's the lifeblood. And Rome was no different. But they didn't have anything like a CIA or an MI6. Instead, their intelligence network was more of a patchwork, starting with a group that had a very, very boring-sounding name.
So let's talk about the Frumentari. Their name literally comes from frumentum, the Latin word for grain. Yeah, their original job was just to make sure the legions got their food. But think about it. Their work took them all across the empire, carrying messages, managing supply lines. They were perfectly placed to see and hear everything. And pretty soon, under emperors like Hadrian, that side gig became their real job. And this is where it gets wild. On the surface, they were just boring bureaucrats. You know, the guys handling grain shipments or collecting taxes. But behind the scenes, they were the emperor's secret police. They spied on everyone, powerful generals, ambitious senators, literally anyone who could be a threat. They could arrest you, they could imprison you, and yeah, when it was necessary, they could make you disappear.
This quote just perfectly captures how terrifyingly good they were. Imagine you're a governor of some remote province, maybe skimming a little off the top. You'd have no idea that the guy who delivered your grain report last week was actually an imperial agent, and that Emperor Hadrian knew everything and was just waiting for the right moment to use it against you. It was an incredible system of control.
Okay, so the Frumentari handled threats inside the empire. But what about outside? For that, Rome had another group, the Arcani. We don't have a ton of info on them, but what we do have is, well, it's pretty awesome. Like this little wooden tablet found up near Hadrian's wall. It's an official record, and it just says Miles Arcanus, secret soldier. I mean, come on, that's basically an ancient spy's ID card.
And get this, we might even have a piece of one of their actual reports. Look at this. This is raw tactical intelligence. The Britons lack armor. Their cavalry don't use swords. This is exactly the kind of stuff a Roman general is desperate to know before an invasion. This wasn't politics. This was battlefield intel that meant the difference between life and death, gathered by the Arcani. Okay, so Rome's got its spies. They know what's happening. But what happens when you need to do something about it? For that, Rome had units that went way beyond just spying. They were the emperor's hidden blade.
And that brings us to the Speculatores. Now, the name just means scouts, and that's how they started. But their role grew into something much, much darker. Their job description was, well, it was not for the faint of heart. They were assassins, they were torturers, they were executioners. When a high-profile target needed to be eliminated quietly, or a prisoner needed to be encouraged to talk, you called the Speculatores.
But you know, Rome's most lethal special forces weren't even an official permanent unit. They were the evocati, the called-out ones. Remember Gaius Crestinus from the beginning? He was one of these guys. These were veterans who'd done their 20 years, they'd retired, and then they got a personal invitation from a general like Julius Caesar saying, hey, how about one more campaign? And their loyalty was completely personal.
And this comparison is just so important. A regular legionary was basically a state employee who did a ton of backbreaking labor. But an evocatus? He was a highly paid elite volunteer. He didn't have to dig ditches or build camps. He got paid double, sometimes quadruple the standard wage. And most important of all, his loyalty wasn't to the Senate or the people of Rome, it was to Caesar, to Pompey, to whoever was signing his paycheck. This is the moment the Roman army starts to belong to warlords, not the Republic.
So, you've created this whole class of elite soldiers whose loyalty can be bought. What could possibly go wrong, right? Well, this is the story of how the emperor's bodyguards eventually became the emperor's bosses.
After all the civil wars, the first emperor, Augustus, knew he needed an elite force he could trust completely. So he looks at these guys, the evocati, these battle-hardened veterans who were loyal to a man, not an idea, and he thinks, I need a permanent version of that. And he used them to build his new creation, the Praetorian Guard. He took a weapon of civil war and put it right at the heart of his empire.
And for a while, it worked. But the Praetorians, being stationed right there in Rome with direct access to the emperor, they figured out their own power pretty quick. They became kingmakers, assassinating emperors they didn't like, putting their own guy on the throne. And it all leads to this, the absolute low point. In 193 AD, they murder the emperor, and then they literally auction off the throne of the Roman Empire to the highest bidder. Can you even imagine? They went from being the protectors of the realm to parasites feeding on. Okay, So we've seen them get too powerful. But what happens when they just fail? When the system completely breaks down? Well, we have a perfect and pretty brutal example of that from Roman Britain. It's called the Great Conspiracy. So picture this. It's the winter of 367 AD, and everything goes wrong at once. You've got Picts from Scotland, Scotti from Ireland, Saxons from Germany, all launching coordinated attacks. And the reason it was so devastating? Betrayal. The local intel guys, the Ariani, probably the same group as the Arconi, they took bribes and sold Rome out. The attack was a total surprise. Commanders were killed, Hadrian's Wall was overrun, and the whole province just collapsed into chaos. It took a massive army to fix things, and the first thing the new general did was get rid of those treacherous spies for good.
So, why are we talking about spies from 2,000 years ago? Does any of this actually matter today? Oh yeah, because the challenges Rome faced, how to gather intelligence, how to use covert power, how to make sure your own people are loyal, those are timeless problems. The patterns from ancient Rome are still playing out right now.
I mean, just look at this. The evocati, elite veterans, loyal to a contract instead of a state, used for politically sensitive missions. Sound familiar? That's the exact model for a modern private military contractor. And the frumentari, a secret state security force spying on its own citizens to maintain political control. The names have changed, but the game is exactly the same.
In the end, the whole story of Rome's secret war comes down to this one single question. When you create powerful, secret organizations to protect the state, how do you protect the state from them? The Romans struggled with it, from the frumentari that became a hated secret police to the praetorians who literally sold the throne. It's a problem they never really solved, and it's a question we are still asking ourselves today.